I woke up from a coma after a week of fighting for my life, and instead of my husband's embrace, I only found a cruel note on the table. Pay for the hospital yourself. You are just a burden. I cried for hours, devastated by the betrayal, until a man in a suit walked into my room and said something that would change everything. Dry your tears. Your husband just threw a diamond in the trash. But before we continue, make sure you are already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments what part of the United States you are watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories reach. The smell of disinfectant was the first thing I registered when my consciousness began to return. My eyes felt glued shut, heavy as lead. I tried to move them, but every muscle in my body protested with a dull, persistent ache. Little by little, forcing all the energy I had left, I managed to open my eyelids. The white light from the ceiling blinded me momentarily. I blinked several times, trying to orient myself. Where was I? The low hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. I turned my head slowly to the right, expecting to find Brad there, my husband, perhaps sleeping in the chair beside me or holding my hand. But the chair was empty, completely empty and tidy, as if no one had sat there in days. My heart shrank. During the 7 years of our marriage, I was always the dedicated wife. I took care of the house, of Brad, sacrificed my own dreams to support his. He should be worried about me, right? He should have stayed by my side while I fought for my life. But the room was silent, cold, abandoned. I looked around for flowers, cards, any sign that someone cared. Nothing. Just the white walls of the hospital and the monotonous beeping of the heart monitor beside me. I was admitted to New York Presbyterian Hospital. It was then that my eyes landed on the nightstand. There, next to a dusty glass of water, was a folded piece of paper. My hand trembled as I reached out to take it. Something inside me screamed that I should not read that, but I could not resist. I unfolded the paper with shaking fingers. The handwriting was unmistakable. Brad's rushed and rough lettering. I read the first line and felt the air escape my lungs. Pay for the hospital yourself. You are just a burden. The following words were even worse. He said he was tired of taking care of me, that I was a drag on his life, an obstacle to his success. At the end, a cold and definitive farewell. He would not be coming back. He was leaving, and I should never look for him. The paper slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor. In that moment, I felt as if the entire world had collapsed on top of me. The tears I had been holding back exploded. I cried like I never had in my life. My whole body shook as the sobs racked me. The physical pain of waking from the coma was nothing compared to the pain tearing my chest apart in that instant. How could he? I had given everything for that man. I gave up my promising career as a graphic designer so he could focus on his. I lived simply, saving every dollar, never complaining when he came home late or spent entire weekends working. I forgave his outbursts of rage, his harsh words in moments of stress. And was this my reward? To be abandoned in a hospital bed like trash? I remembered all the times he told me he loved me, all the promises that we would be together forever, in sickness and in health. All lies. It was all a lie. I looked at the clock on the wall. How long had I been unconscious? A whole week. 7 days fighting between life and death, and he did not even stay to see if I would wake up. He simply left me there, like a problem he no longer wanted to solve. I felt like the most naive person on the planet. How was I so blind? How did I not see that he never truly loved me? Hours passed as I sank into that sea of sadness. My eyes were swollen. My throat hurt from crying so much. I had no parents. I lost them both in a car accident when I was 20 years old. I had no siblings. Brad was all I had, and now I had nothing. No one. Loneliness swallowed me like a black hole. I seriously thought about whether it was worth having woken up. Maybe it would have been better not to have survived the coma. At least then, I would not feel this unbearable pain. I was staring at the ceiling with empty eyes when I heard the doorknob turn. I did not turn around. It was probably a nurse coming to check my vitals, or a doctor coming to bill me for the hospitalization I had no way to pay for. But the footsteps that entered were different. Firm, decisive, nothing like the hurried steps of health professionals. I heard the sound of expensive dress shoes against the hospital floor, Then I smelled an elegant masculine cologne, completely different from the medicinal smell that dominated the room. I turned my head slowly. A middle-aged man was standing there, a few feet from my bed. He wore an impeccable dark suit, perfectly tailored. His gray hair was combed with care, and his face radiated a natural authority. But what surprised me most was the expression in his eyes. It was not condescending pity or contempt. It was genuine respect and concern. I wiped my tears quickly with the back of my hand, trying to recover some dignity, even knowing I must look horrible. "Who are you?" I managed to ask in a hoarse voice. He gave a slight, reassuring smile and gave a respectful bow. "My name is Arthur," he said in a deep but gentle voice, "and I came here because I finally found you, after years of searching." I frowned, confused. Searching for me? That made no sense at all. Arthur cast a brief glance at Brad's note on the floor, and something changed in his expression. A spark of anger passed through his eyes, but he quickly controlled it. "Do not cry over trash," he said, pointing to the paper. "That man just threw away a precious diamond to pick up pebbles in the street." I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. Diamond? Pebbles? What was he talking about? "He made the biggest mistake of his life by not knowing who you really are," Arthur continued, taking a step forward. "And I am here to tell you the truth that has been hidden from you for so long." My heart raced. "Truth? What truth? I do not understand," I murmured. "Who do you think I am?" Arthur pulled up a chair and sat beside me, maintaining a respectful posture. "Do you remember the accident 7 years ago?" he asked calmly. I froze. Yes, I remembered. Or rather, I remembered fragments. Intense headache, bright lights, then nothing. I woke up in a hospital with no clear memories of who I was or where I came from. Brad was there, saying he had found me and helped me. He filled in the gaps in my memory. He told me I was a woman with no family, no past. And I believed him. I depended on him for everything. "The accident was not an accident," Arthur said, and his words hit me like a punch. "You were deliberately separated from your family. And Brad, he knew it. He took advantage of your amnesia to make you believe you had no one else but him." The walls of the room seemed to be spinning. "This cannot be true," I whispered, but my voice sounded weak even to myself. Arthur took a tablet out of his leather briefcase. With careful movements, he opened a photo and turned the screen toward me. In the image, I was wearing expensive clothes, smiling next to a distinguished man with gray hair. The setting in the background was an imposing estate in the Hamptons. "This man was your father," Arthur said softly, "owner of one of the largest business conglomerates in the country. He spent the last years of his life looking for you, until he died 3 years ago of heart disease. He never gave up on finding his daughter." Tears rolled down my face again, but now they were different. They were not tears of abandonment, but of shock, confusion, and a tiny bit of impossible hope. "I had a father?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Yes, you did," Arthur confirmed, "and he loved you more than anything in this world. I was his personal assistant, and he made me promise that I would keep looking for you even after his death. It took years, but I finally found you. Here, in this hospital, abandoned by the man who took advantage of your vulnerability." I looked at the photo again. There was something familiar in that face, in that smile, as if a deeply buried memory was trying to surface. "If this is true," I began, barely managing to form the words, "if I really am that person, why would Brad do this?" Arthur swiped his finger on the screen, showing more images. "Bank records, money transfers. While you were in a coma this week, I investigated your husband," he explained. "I discovered he drained all the savings you had together, money you earned before the accident, that you saved thinking about your future. He transferred everything to an account in the name of Jessica." Jessica. The name went through me like a knife. Jessica was my best friend, or at least I thought she was. She came to the house frequently, ate with us, cried on my shoulder about her problems. I trusted her completely. "No," I groaned, feeling my world collapse for the second time that day. "They have been having an affair for at least 2 years, Arthur said bluntly, "and they planned this. While you were fighting for your life, they emptied your bank account and disappeared together." My vision blurred. The 2 people I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the worst way possible. It was not just a betrayal. It was calculated, cruel, planned. "But now," Arthur said, and his voice acquired a tone of determination. "You no longer need to worry about hospital bills or where you are going to live. You are the legitimate heiress of an empire. Everything that belonged to your father is now yours, and my job is to guarantee that you recover not only your assets but your dignity." I looked at him, barely able to believe it. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "Why do you care?" "Because I promised your father I would take care of you," he replied simply, "and because no woman deserves to be treated the way you were treated." In that moment, something inside me changed. The sadness began to transform into something different, something stronger. Anger. Determination. Brad and Jessica thought they had won. They thought they could discard me like trash and move on with their happy lives. But they were very, very wrong. The old, cracked cell phone that was on the table vibrated suddenly, making my heart jump. The broken screen lit up, showing the name. Brad. I looked at Arthur, who nodded calmly, as if waiting for this. "Answer it," he said. "Listen to what he has to say." With trembling hands, I picked up the phone and swiped my finger to answer. Before I could say anything, Brad's harsh voice exploded on the other side. "I am coming to the hospital tomorrow," he announced without preamble, without even asking how I was. "I am bringing my lawyer. I want the divorce as soon as possible." Every word was like a slap. "And do not even think about asking for any of the assets," he continued, his voice full of arrogance. "You never contributed anything financially. You were always a burden, so you will not see a single cent of mine." Tears burned my eyes, but they were no longer tears of sadness. It was anger, pure anger boiling in my veins. "Brad," I began, but he cut me off. "And one more thing," he said with cruelty. "I never really loved you. You were always pathetic, desperate, clinging to me like a parasite. I am glad to finally be free." He hung up. I lowered the phone slowly. My whole body was shaking. Arthur watched me with concern, but also with something that looked like approval, as if he were watching a transformation happen within me. And he was. Something inside me had broken, but not in the way Brad expected. I did not break in despair. I broke free from the chains of submission that I myself had put on during all these years. "He is going to regret it," Arthur said calmly. "When he finds out who you really are, when he realizes what he lost, it will be too late." "No," I corrected, my voice coming out stronger than I expected. "When I am done with him, regret will be the least of his problems." Arthur smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of someone recognizing a warrior being born. "Then let us begin," he said. In the following hours, Arthur took care of all the paperwork for my hospital discharge. There was no drama about unpaid bills. There were no nurses looking at me with pity or disdain. Everything was paid silently, efficiently. When I left the hospital, I did not go to the bus stop, as I normally would. Instead, I walked to a gleaming black town car parked in the VIP area. A uniformed chauffeur got out and opened the back door for me, bowing respectfully. I got into the car, feeling the soft leather under my hands, breathing the fresh air conditioning that smelled vaguely of expensive perfume. It was so different from the stifling smell of the hospital, from the cramped apartment in a working-class neighborhood where I lived with Brad. During the entire ride, I stared out the window, watching the city pass by. I watched the people on the street, remembering how I used to be one of them, struggling, saving, sacrificing everything for a man who never valued me. The car entered a neighborhood that I only knew from magazines and TV shows. Huge mansions hidden behind high walls and iron gates. When we arrived at my destination, the gates opened automatically. I held my breath. The mansion in front of me was like something out of a dream. Elegant classic architecture, impeccable green lawns, a marble fountain in the center of the driveway. Fragmented memories began to emerge in my mind. Me running across that lawn as a child, my father lifting me in his arms near the fountain. Tears ran down my face, but this time they were tears of nostalgia. Nostalgia for a father I barely remembered, but who had loved me unconditionally. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. Staff members were lined up, waiting. When I got out of the car, they all bowed in unison. "Welcome back, Miss Victoria," they said in chorus. Victoria, my real name. For 7 years I had been called only by affectionate nicknames by Brad, which were actually ways to diminish me, to make me feel small. Arthur guided me inside. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Everything was exactly as I vaguely remembered. The paintings on the walls, the antique furniture, the spiral staircase. But there was no time for nostalgia. Arthur reminded me that we had a lot of work ahead. First, the physical transformation. I was taken to a room that had been transformed into a private salon. A team of professionals awaited me. Esthetician, hairdresser, manicurist, even a personal stylist. In the following hours, I was completely transformed. My skin, which was dull and tired from years of stress and neglect, was treated with the best products. My hair, which I cut myself to save money, was professionally treated and styled. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back at me was not Brad's submissive and tired wife. She was someone powerful, confident, radiant. Now the clothes, the stylist said, guiding me to a walk-in closet the size of my entire old apartment. There were clothes from famous designers, all new, all carefully selected. I chose an elegant but simple outfit, black dress pants and a white silk blouse, paired with high heels that made my steps resonate with authority. But the physical transformation was just the beginning. Arthur took me to my father's office. It was a huge room, dominated by a massive mahogany desk. On it, stacks of documents awaited me. "Your father left 90% of the business group's shares to you," Arthur explained. "This includes the company where Brad works, headquartered in Manhattan." I felt a cold smile form on my lips. "So Brad works for me now?" "Technically, yes," Arthur confirmed. "He does not know it yet, of course. The transfer of ownership was only made official a few weeks ago, after we concluded the confirmation of your identity through DNA. I spent the next few hours studying financial reports, organizational structures, employee profiles. My mind, which Brad always despised as inferior, absorbed everything quickly. I discovered that I was always intelligent. I had just buried my intelligence so as not to threaten my husband's fragile ego. I analyzed Brad's department specifically. I read about the project he bragged so much about, the one that supposedly guaranteed him a recent promotion. The more I read, the more problems I found. Manipulated data, inflated reports, small frauds that had gone unnoticed by the previous management. "He was always dishonest," I murmured, taking notes. "And now you have the proof," said Arthur. "The question is, how do you want to proceed?" I leaned back in my father's large chair, the same chair where he must have made countless difficult decisions throughout his life. "Tomorrow he is coming to the hospital to give me the divorce papers," I said slowly, formulating a plan. "Let him come. Let him think he is winning. I am going to sign the papers." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "And then?" "Then," I replied, feeling a cold determination settle in my chest. "We are going to show him exactly what he lost. We are going to destroy every piece of the life he built on lies." Arthur smiled. It was a smile that promised revenge. "There is one more thing you need to know," he said, becoming serious again. He opened a different file, this one marked confidential. My heart raced. What else could there be? "During your week in a coma, I ordered some toxicological tests," Arthur explained. "Standard procedure when someone goes into a sudden coma without clear medical explanation." He opened the file and put it in front of me. My eyes scanned the medical report. Technical terms I did not fully understand, but the conclusion was circled in red: residues of toxic chemical substances found in the blood. Arsenic, in small doses, accumulated over time. Poisoning. Someone was poisoning me. "It was not sickness," Arthur said gravely. "It was not exhaustion or stress. Someone deliberately tried to kill you, slowly, to make it look natural." My vision blurred. I felt nausea rising in my throat. "Who?" I began, but deep down I already knew the answer. Arthur turned the page. There were surveillance photos. Jessica, my supposed best friend, buying something in a shady market. More photos showed jars of dangerous chemicals found in the trash of her apartment. And then, the final evidence. Footage from security cameras I did not even know existed in my own apartment. Brad pouring white powder into my tea every night. Jessica doing the same when she came to visit me. They were killing me, Together. Systematically. Why? I whispered. Although the question seemed foolish, I knew why. Money. Arthur replied simply. Brad took out a life insurance policy in your name 6 months ago. The beneficiary is him. If you died of apparently natural causes, he would receive $5 million. $5 million. That was the price of my life to him. I closed my eyes, feeling the anger burn stronger than ever. They almost succeeded, Arthur said softly. If you had stayed a few more days in that apartment, drinking what they gave you, you probably would not be here now. I opened my eyes. There were no more tears. Only cold and calculating determination. Keep that evidence safe, I ordered, my voice coming out firm and controlled. We are not going to the police yet. First, I am going to make them pay in other ways. Then, when they are completely destroyed, then I will hand everything over to the authorities. Revenge is a dish best served cold, Arthur commented. It is not revenge, I corrected. It is justice, and it is going to be served freezing. The next morning dawned clear and sunny, but I felt nothing but calculating coldness. I was back at the New York Presbyterian Hospital, in the same room where I had woken up from the coma. Arthur had arranged everything. The room was still reserved in my name, as if I had never left. I dressed on purpose in simple and worn clothes, the same ones I wore when I was Brad's submissive wife. I tied my hair in a messy bun. I wiped off any trace of makeup. I needed to look like the same pathetic woman he expected to find. Arthur was hidden behind a divider curtain, with a discreet camera already recording. We had agreed on every detail of the plan. At 10 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart raced, but not from fear or anxiety. It was anticipation. The door opened abruptly, without knocking, without courtesy. Brad walked in with that arrogant expression I knew so well. But what made my blood boil was seeing Jessica walking in right behind him, her arm linked in his, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She was wearing a purse I recognized immediately, a very expensive designer bag, the same one I had admired in a store window months ago, but would never buy because we were saving for the future. Apparently, my stolen money had bought that bag for her. I forced myself to lower my eyes, assuming the posture of the defeated wife they expected to see. Brad did not even ask how I was. He simply threw a red folder onto my lap. Divorce papers, he announced without ceremony. Sign now. I do not have all day. I opened the folder with intentionally trembling hands. I read the unfair clauses. I renounced everything. I would not ask for alimony. I would assume all the debts. It was absurd, but perfect for my purposes. Is there no second chance for us? I asked with a weak voice, playing my role perfectly. Brad laughed. It was a cruel, mocking laugh. Second chance? He repeated, as if it were the funniest joke he had ever heard. For what? To keep carrying a burden? Look at yourself, Victoria. You are pathetic. You were never good enough for me. Jessica joined in the laughter, the sound shrill and malicious. You should be thankful he had patience with you for all these years, she said, voice full of false pity. Now let him be happy with someone who really deserves him. Every word was a stab, but I swallowed it all. I took the pen Brad offered me. I always loved you, I murmured, selling the performance. I did everything for you. And that was never enough, he replied coldly. Now, sign this garbage already. I signed. Every stroke of my signature was a silent promise of revenge. Brad snatched the folder from my hands as soon as I finished, as if he were afraid I would change my mind. His face lit up with satisfaction. He even had the audacity to kiss Jessica right there, in front of me, as if I were invisible. Done, he said, turning to me one last time. Now we are strangers. Do not look for me. Do not show up at my job. Do not ask for money. I want you out of my life forever. I kept my head down, hiding the cold smile that threatened to appear on my lips. Just remind me of one thing, Brad, I said quietly, when they were almost at the door. It was you who asked for me to leave. It was you who sent me away. Remember that when you come begging me to come back. He stopped for a second, frowning as if surprised by my change of tone. But his arrogance overcame any suspicion. As if I were going to do that, he scoffed. Not in a million years would I get back with you. The door closed behind them. As soon as the sound of their footsteps disappeared down the hallway, Arthur came out from behind the curtain. The camera was still in his hand. "I captured everything," he said. "Every cruel word, every insult. This will be useful." "Great," I replied, already getting out of bed. The submissive posture vanished instantly, replaced by the strong woman I had become. Now the fun part begins. I changed clothes quickly, putting on one of the elegant outfits I had brought. Arthur helped me fix my hair and touch up my makeup. In 15 minutes, the transformation was complete. "Ready for your first day as CEO?" Arthur asked with a smile. "More than ready," I replied. The car took us directly to the company. It was an impressive skyscraper in the financial district of Manhattan. As we went up, Arthur explained the plan. I convened an emergency board meeting. We announced the change of ownership this morning, causing a general uproar. Brad must be completely unaware of what is happening. "Perfect," I murmured, feeling the adrenaline run through my veins. We arrived at the executive floor. Employees bowed as they saw me pass, although many clearly did not know who I was, yet. Arthur guided me to the main conference room, a huge room with glass walls that offered a panoramic view of the city. The board of directors was already gathered, everyone in their seats. There were also senior managers, major investors, and there, at the end of the table, unaware of what was to come, was Brad. He was smiling, proud, adjusting his tie. He probably thought he had been called to be praised for his work, maybe receive a bonus. Poor idiot. Everyone was seated with their backs to the entrance, waiting for the arrival of the new CEO. I signaled to Arthur, who nodded. "Ladies and gentlemen," Arthur announced loudly, "allow me to introduce the new owner and CEO of the company, Miss Victoria Vance." I walked into the room with firm steps, my high heels resonating on the marble floor. Everyone turned around. Brad's face went through 20 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, shock, horror. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I walked to the head of the table, where the large CEO chair awaited me. I sat gracefully, crossing my legs, facing everyone present with calm and authority. "Good morning," I said, my voice filling the silent room. "For those who do not know me, I am Victoria Vance, sole heiress of the late William Vance, and now majority owner of this business group." Brad tried to stand up, his legs shaking so much he almost fell. This cannot be," he stammered. You are just what, Brad?" I asked, my voice cold as ice. "A pathetic woman? A burden? Were those the words you used less than an hour ago?" He went deadly pale. "Sit down," I ordered. "We have a lot to discuss." Brad fell back into the chair, in shock. The other board members watched me with curiosity and growing respect. "I have come to assume leadership of this company personally because I discovered several irregularities that need to be corrected immediately," I continued, looking directly at Brad. "And I am going to start with the projects department." I gestured to Arthur, who distributed folders to everyone present. Inside was all the evidence I had compiled the night before. The data manipulated by Brad, the small but consistent frauds, the falsified reports. These documents prove that the project manager, Brad Thompson, has systematically deceived this company for years, I declared, manipulating data to make his projects seem more successful than they really are, embezzling small amounts that he thought no one would notice. Brad tried to protest, but one of the directors silenced him with a stern look. "Furthermore," I continued, "I discovered that he violated the company's code of ethics in multiple ways, which brings me to my decision." I paused dramatically, letting the silence weigh on everyone. "Mr. Brad Thompson, you are fired from the position of project manager, effective immediately." "No!" Brad shouted, finally finding his voice. "You cannot do this. I worked for years at this company. I can and I am," I replied calmly. "But since I know you have no financial resources at the moment, I am going to offer 2 options. First, you can accept the termination and pay a fine of $5 million for breach of contract and misconduct." I saw Brad's face turn even whiter. He did not have $5 million. I knew it. He knew I knew it. "Or option 2, I continued, savoring every word. "You can accept a transfer to a position in the warehouse, minimum wage, and work to pay off your debt through salary deductions over the next few years." It was pure humiliation, and I loved every second. You have 30 seconds to decide, I said, looking at my expensive watch. Brad stared at me with hatred and desperation. But what choice did he have? Complete bankruptcy or prolonged humiliation? I accept the transfer, he murmured, defeated. Excellent, I said with a cold smile. Security will escort you to your new job post. Immediately, 2 security guards I had positioned outside entered. They took Brad by the arms, still in a state of shock, and dragged him out of the conference room under the gazes of all his former colleagues. The door closed. I took a deep breath, feeling profound satisfaction. It was just the beginning. But what a glorious beginning. Now, I said, turning my attention back to the rest of the board, let us discuss the improvements I intend to implement in this company. The meeting continued for 2 more hours. I presented my ideas. I heard the director's concerns. I answered questions. With every minute that passed, I felt their respect growing. When we finally adjourned, several of them congratulated me personally, expressing enthusiasm for the new leadership. But my work was not done yet. I still had to deal with Jessica. The warehouse in the basement of the building was a completely different world from the upper floors. There was no fresh air conditioning, soft carpets, or panoramic views of the city. Just stifling heat, dust floating under dim fluorescent lights, and the smell of cardboard and sweat. Through the building's security cameras, which I now had full access to, I watched Brad being handed over to the warehouse supervisor, a burly man named Big Mike, who, according to the records, had been reprimanded by Brad several times for insignificant issues in recent years. The irony was delicious. Brad was standing in the middle of the warehouse aisle, wearing his expensive suit that now looked completely out of place. The supervisor threw a worn work uniform at him. "Put this on," Big Mike ordered, with a smile that made it clear he was loving the situation. "And then I want you to move 500 boxes from Sector A to the loading dock before lunch. If you do not finish, you do not rest." I watched Brad try to protest, saying that was manual labor, that he had a college degree, but Big Mike just laughed and reminded him that now his status was that of a loader, and that he had to do what he was told or report directly to the CEO. Upon hearing my title, Brad paled and stopped complaining. I turned off the monitor, satisfied. He would spend the next few days, probably months, doing heavy manual labor, feeling every muscle ache, understanding what it really means to work hard. But my revenge was not complete. There was still Jessica. 2 hours later, there was a commotion in the building's lobby. My secretary informed me that a woman was causing a scene, screaming my name, demanding to see me. I smiled. Perfect. I asked security not to remove her yet. I wanted everyone to see what was about to happen. I went down to the lobby, accompanied by Arthur and several executives. The elevator opened, revealing a chaotic scene. Jessica was in the center of the lobby, wearing expensive but already rumpled clothes, screaming that I was an evil woman who had destroyed her and Brad's lives unfairly. She was trying to play the victim for the growing crowd of employees and visitors. When she saw me, she tried to run in my direction, but security guards stopped her. "How dare you do this to us?" she screamed, voice hysterical. "You do not have the right." Brad worked hard at this company. I approached calmly, my steps resonating in the tense silence that had taken over the lobby. I stopped a few feet from her. "Jessica," I said, voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are right about one thing. I do not have the right to take anything from Brad, because he never had anything that was truly his. Everything he possessed was built on lies, fraud, and stolen money." "That is not true," she screamed. "You are making things up because you are jealous." I signaled to Arthur, who turned on a portable projector aimed at the white wall of the lobby. Images began to appear. Bank statements showing the transfers of the money Brad had stolen from me to Jessica's account. Photos of her buying suspicious chemical substances. Surveillance videos of her pouring things into my food. The crowd gasped collectively. Jessica's face went from red with anger to white with panic. "You and Brad did not just betray me," I continued, my voice cutting through the silence. "You tried to kill me. You systematically poisoned me for months, planning my death to collect life insurance money." Shocked murmurs echoed through the lobby. "But do you know what is most pathetic, Jessica?" I asked, stepping even closer. "You sold your soul, your integrity, committed terrible crimes for a man who is worth nothing. Congratulations, you can keep him." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. "Security," I called. "Please remove this woman from the premises, and if she returns, call the police." Jessica was dragged outside, screaming empty threats and insults. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering among themselves about the drama they had just witnessed. I returned to my office, feeling strangely empty. The revenge I had planned was unfolding perfectly, but it did not bring me the satisfaction I expected. There was something else that needed to be resolved. That night, alone in my office, looking out the window at the illuminated city below, Arthur entered silently. "The lawyers are ready to file criminal charges against Brad and Jessica," he informed me. "We have more than enough evidence to guarantee long prison sentences for both." I nodded slowly. "But?" Arthur asked, sensing my hesitation. "Will that be enough?" I asked more to myself. "Prison, public humiliation. Will it really change anything? Will it make them understand the pain they caused?" "Probably not," Arthur replied honestly. "People like them rarely learn. But it is not about them learning. It is about justice, and about you moving on." He was right. I knew he was right. "There is one more thing you need to know," Arthur said, placing another folder on my desk. "Information that arrived today." I opened the folder. Inside were documents showing that Jessica was pregnant. By Brad, presumably. My stomach turned. "She is trying to use this as a way to get money out of him," Arthur explained. "But, considering Brad's current financial situation, they are having a child," I murmured, feeling a strange twinge in my chest. It was not jealousy. It was pity? For the innocent child who would be born to two selfish criminals? "What do you want to do with this information?" Arthur asked. I closed the folder decisively. "Nothing," I replied. "This child is not to blame for the sins of her parents. Let them deal with the consequences of their own choices. My focus now needs to be on moving forward, not staying trapped in the past." Arthur smiled, proud. "I knew you would say that," he commented. "You are a much better person than they could ever be." In the following days, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. Not just destroying Brad and Jessica, but also building something positive from the chaos they had created in my life. I used part of my fortune to establish a foundation dedicated to helping women victims of domestic abuse and manipulation. Women who, like me, had been controlled, diminished, and betrayed by people who should love them. The foundation offered temporary shelter, legal assistance, professional training, and psychological support. I wanted to ensure that no other woman had to go through what I went through, feeling completely alone and without resources. The response was overwhelming. In a few weeks, dozens of women sought help. Every story I heard broke my heart, but also strengthened me. It confirmed that I was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, the criminal investigation against Brad and Jessica was advancing. The evidence was undeniable: attempted murder, insurance fraud, theft. The list of charges was long. 3 months after waking from the coma, I received the news I was waiting for. Brad and Jessica had been formally charged. The preliminary hearing was set. They were detained at the state penitentiary. I decided to attend personally. The court was full that day. Journalists, curious onlookers, some company employees who wanted to see the final downfall of the man who used to be so arrogant. When Brad was brought in, handcuffed, I barely recognized him. He had lost a drastic amount of weight. His eyes were sunken, surrounded by dark circles. The work in the warehouse and the stress of the criminal investigation had taken their toll. He saw me in the audience, and our eyes met for a brief moment. I saw in them something I never thought I would see: genuine regret. But it was too late. Jessica was brought in next, also handcuffed. She looked equally shattered, her belly already showing signs of pregnancy. The district attorney presented the evidence methodically: the surveillance videos showing the poisoning, the bank records proving the theft. Everything was there, indisputable. The defense lawyers tried to argue that there were mitigating circumstances, that Brad was under financial pressure, that Jessica had been manipulated. But no argument could erase the deliberate cruelty of their actions. The judge, a severe middle-aged woman, heard everything with an impassive expression. When it came time for her preliminary decision, she had no mercy. Premeditated attempted murder is one of the most serious crimes in our penal code, she declared, especially when committed against someone who trusted the defendants. The case will go to a jury trial, and I recommend that both remain detained without bail until the trial. Brad collapsed. He literally fell to his knees, sobbing. Jessica screamed, protesting, but was quickly silenced by the guards. As they were taken away, I stood up to leave. I felt no triumph or joy, just closure. A terrible chapter of my life was finally being closed. In the courthouse hallway, a journalist tried to interview me. "Mrs. Vance, how do you feel seeing your ex-husband and ex-best friend being accused of trying to kill you?" I stopped, considering the question carefully. "I feel free," I replied honestly. Free from toxic people who pretended to be loved ones, free to live my life on my own terms, and determined to use my experience to help others who are going through similar situations. "And what about forgiveness?" the journalist insisted. "Will you ever be able to forgive them?" I smiled sadly. "Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or allowing them to escape the consequences of their actions," I replied. "It means not letting hate consume me. In that sense, I have already forgiven. But that does not change the fact that they need to pay for what they did." I left the courthouse with Arthur by my side, feeling the warm sun on my face. "Where to now?" he asked. "To the foundation," I replied. "We have a new class of women starting the vocational training program today. I want to be there to welcome them personally." As the car glided through traffic, I reflected on how my life had completely changed in a few months. From a submissive and manipulated wife to a powerful CEO and defender of vulnerable women. Brad and Jessica had tried to destroy me, but in the process, they ended up setting me free. They forced me to discover who I really was. The strength that was always inside me, but that I had buried to please other people. Because of that, in a strange way, I was even grateful to them. Not for the crimes, of course, but for inadvertently giving me the chance to be reborn. 6 months after the preliminary hearing, the trial finally began. I was sitting in the front row of the public gallery, wearing an elegant but sober suit. I did not want to look vengeful or triumphant. I was there simply as a victim seeking justice. The jury had been carefully selected. 12 ordinary citizens who now held the fate of Brad and Jessica in their hands. For 3 weeks they heard testimony, saw evidence, debated amongst themselves. I was called to testify on the 5th day. As I walked to the witness stand, I felt every eye on me. Brad was sitting at the defense table, head down, unable to look me in the eye. Jessica was crying silently, holding her already large belly. I swore to tell the truth and sat down. The DA guided me through my testimony with carefully crafted questions. I told about my marriage to Brad, how I had been a dedicated wife, about my supposed friendship with Jessica, how I trusted her completely, about how I began to feel increasingly sick, without understanding why. "And when you woke up from the coma," the DA asked, "what did you find?" "A note," I replied, my voice steady despite the emotion I felt reliving that moment, saying to pay for the hospital myself, that I was just a burden. A murmur ran through the courtroom. "And how did that make you feel?" "Devastated," I admitted. "Completely devastated. I thought I had lost everything. My husband, my friend, my life. I did not know yet that they had literally tried to take my life." Brad's defense attorney tried to discredit me during cross-examination, suggesting that I was exaggerating my symptoms, that perhaps the toxic substances in my blood came from another source. But the evidence was too strong. The surveillance videos were particularly devastating. When they were shown to the jury, Brad pouring poison into my drink night after night, Jessica doing the same when she visited me, several jurors visibly recoiled, horrified. Medical experts testified about the effects of arsenic on the human body, how the doses I had received were calculated to kill slowly over months, making it look like a natural illness. An insurance investigator testified about the policy Brad had secretly taken out in my name and how he would be the sole beneficiary if I died. With each day of the trial, the prosecution's case grew stronger. The defense tried to argue that Brad was under extreme financial pressure, that Jessica was coerced by him. But the videos showed both acting willingly, even laughing while planning my death. On the last day of testimony, Jessica asked to speak in her own defense. Against her lawyer's advice, she took the stand. With tears streaming down her face, she admitted everything. She said she regretted it, that she didn't know what she was getting into, that Brad had convinced her I would never find out. "I was an idiot," she sobbed. "I destroyed my life, my reputation, everything, for a man who is worth nothing, and now my child is going to be born with a criminal mother." It was a dramatic moment, but also pathetic. She was trying to gain sympathy from the jury with the pregnancy, but it was too obvious. Brad did not testify. His lawyer wisely decided to keep him quiet, knowing that anything he said would only make things worse. During closing arguments, the prosecutor was ruthless. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, pointing to Brad and Jessica, "you saw the evidence. You saw the videos. You heard the expert's testimony. These two individuals, people the victim loved and trusted completely, deliberately tried to kill her out of greed, for money. There is no mitigating circumstance that justifies this. There is no excuse. They need to pay for what they did." The defense attorney tried to appeal to the jury's compassion, talking about how Brad had a family to support, how Jessica was pregnant, but his words rang hollow against the weight of the evidence. The jury retired to deliberate. I left the courtroom, not wanting to stay there waiting. Arthur accompanied me to a nearby cafe. "How are you feeling?" he asked as we drank coffee. "Strange," I admitted. "For months I worked to get to this moment, and now that it is here, I do not know what to feel. I am not happy. I am not sad. Just tired." "It is understandable," Arthur said. "You went through immense trauma, but it is almost over. Soon you will truly be able to move on." 2 hours later, we received the call. The jury had reached a verdict. We rushed back to the courtroom. The room was full again, everyone anxious to hear the result. The judge entered and called for silence. The jury foreman stood up, holding a piece of paper. "In the case of the state versus Brad Thompson and Jessica Sanders," he began, voice clear, "as to the charge of attempted first-degree murder, we find the defendants guilty." Brad collapsed onto the table, burying his face in his hands. Jessica screamed, protesting, but was quickly comforted by her lawyer. "As to the charge of insurance fraud," the foreman continued, "guilty. As to the charge of aggravated theft, guilty. Guilty on all counts." The judge thanked the jury and set sentencing for 2 weeks later. When I left the court that time, I finally felt a little peace. Justice had been done. It was not about revenge. It was about accountability, about ensuring that people who do terrible things do not go unpunished. The 2 weeks until sentencing passed quickly. I spent that time immersed in foundation work. We helped 30 more women that month get out of abusive situations, to rebuild their lives. Every woman I helped was a victory, proof that something good could come even from the most horrible experience. When the day of sentencing arrived, I attended again. The courtroom was even more crowded than before, with TV cameras outside capturing everything. The judge entered and got straight to the point. "Brad Thompson and Jessica Sanders," she said, voice stern, "you have been found guilty of serious crimes. You tried to take the life of an innocent person out of greed. You betrayed the trust of someone who loved you. There are not enough mitigating factors to justify leniency." She looked directly at Brad. "Mr. Thompson, you are sentenced to 20 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 10 years. Brad moaned, but did not protest. He knew it was useless. "Miss Sanders," the judge continued, "in consideration of your pregnancy and the fact that you have shown some genuine remorse, your sentence will be 15 years, with the possibility of parole after 8 years. Your child, when born, will be placed in state custody until you prove yourself capable of being a fit mother." Jessica sobbed, but nodded in acceptance. "Furthermore," the judge added, "both are ordered to pay restitution to the victim for the full value of the damages caused, including medical expenses, emotional suffering, and therapy." The gavel banged. It was done. As Brad and Jessica were led away in handcuffs, I felt something I did not expect: compassion. Not for their crimes, but for how they had wasted their lives, for how greed and selfishness had destroyed them. Outside the courtroom, journalists crowded around me. "Mrs. Vance, are you satisfied with the sentence?" "Yes," I replied simply. Justice was done. Now I can truly move on. What is next for you? Continuing my work at the foundation, I said. Helping other women who are going through similar situations. Using my experience to make a difference in the world. And what about forgiveness? Did you forgive Brad and Jessica? I paused, considering the question carefully. Forgiveness is complex, I replied. I am not going to forget what they did. I am not going to minimize the gravity of their crimes, but I am also not going to let hate consume my life. In that sense, yes, I forgave. Not for them, but for me, so that I can live in peace. Later that day, I was alone in my office, looking out the window at the city. Arthur entered silently. Is everything okay? He asked. Yes, I replied honestly. For the first time in a long time, I am truly okay. What did Brad say to you before being taken away? Arthur asked. I saw you exchanged a few words. I had forgotten to mention it. When the guards were taking Brad away, he had asked to speak with me for a moment. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He was teary-eyed, voice broken. I am sorry, he had whispered, for everything. You were always too good for me, and I treated you like trash. You were a diamond, exactly like that man said, and I was too much of an idiot to see it. Yes, you were, I replied simply. If I could go back? But you cannot, I interrupted. No one can. We have to live with the consequences of our choices. You chose greed over love. You chose betrayal over loyalty. And now you are going to spend the next 20 years thinking about that. You are so different, he said, looking at me with something that seemed like admiration mixed with regret. Strong, confident. It is like you are a completely different person. I am not different, I corrected. I was always this person. You just never allowed me to be. You kept me small so you could feel big. But now I am free to be who I really am. Those were the last words I exchanged with him. The guards took him away, and I turned without looking back. I told this to Arthur now, weeks later. And how did you feel saying that to him? Arthur asked. Powerful, I admitted, but also sad. Sad for the person I was, who accepted being treated that way. Sad for the time I wasted with someone who did not value me. But you did not waste that time, Arthur said wisely. You learned from it. You grew. You became the incredible woman you are today. None of this would happen if you had not gone through that horrible experience. He was right. In a strange and twisted way, Brad did me a favor by betraying me so completely. He forced me to wake up, to see my own worth, to fight for myself. You know what is funny? I said, turning to face Arthur. For years, my entire identity was tied to being Brad's wife. I was not Victoria. I was Brad's wife. And now that I am no longer that, I discovered who Victoria really is, and she is much better than I ever imagined. Arthur smiled, proud. Your father would be very proud of you, he said softly. Those words moved me more than I expected. Tears filled my eyes. Do you think so? I am sure, Arthur replied. He always said you had a strong spirit, even as a child. That when you grew up, you would be a force for good in the world. And he was right. The months following Brad and Jessica's sentencing were transformative. I immersed myself completely in the Foundation's work, expanding our services to 3 different cities. We were helping hundreds of women now, offering not only temporary shelter, but also real vocational training, competent legal assistance, and perhaps most importantly, a community of support. One morning I was reviewing proposals for a new mentorship program when my secretary entered, looking hesitant. Mrs. Vance, there is someone here asking to see you, she said. She does not have an appointment, but she said it is urgent. It is about Brad Thompson. My heart skipped a beat. Had something happened? Despite everything, a small part of me still cared in a distant way. Who is she? She said her name is Sarah. Sarah Thompson. I frowned. I did not know anyone with that name. Show her in. A young woman entered my office moments later. She must have been in her early 20s, dark hair tied in a simple ponytail, eyes tired but determined. She was dressed modestly, but with dignity. Mrs. Vance, she said, voice trembling. Thank you for seeing me without notice. I did not know who else to talk to. Please, sit down. I indicated the chair across from my desk. How can I help you? She sat down, twisting her hands nervously in her lap. My name is Sarah Thompson, she began. I am Brad's sister. I froze. Brad had never mentioned having a sister. But then I realized there was a lot about him I never knew. I did not know Brad had a sister, I said carefully. He likes to pretend he doesn't, Sarah replied with a sad smile. Our parents died when we were young. Brad was 2 years older than me. He got a scholarship to college and basically abandoned me. He said I held him back, that he had bigger ambitions than taking care of a little sister. My heart tightened. Was this so typically Brad? I am sorry, I said sincerely. I did not come here seeking sympathy, Sarah said quickly. I came because I read about what happened, the trial, the sentence, everything, and I needed to come here personally to apologize. Apologize? I repeated, confused. Why? You did not do anything. I knew, Sarah whispered, tears filling her eyes. Not about the poisoning. Never about that, I swear. But I knew he was having an affair with your friend. I saw them together once, months before you got sick. I confronted Brad, and he threatened me. He said if I told you, he would make sure I never got a decent job anywhere. And I got scared. I needed my job, so I stayed quiet. She was crying openly now, and because of my silence, you suffered. You almost died, and I need to live with that for the rest of my life. I stood up and walked around the desk, kneeling beside her and taking her hands. Sarah, look at me, I said softly. She raised her red eyes. You are not responsible for your brother's actions. He manipulated and intimidated you, just as he did with me for years. You were a victim of his too, but I could have warned you, and he probably would have found a way to make it look like you were lying, I interrupted. People like Brad are experts in manipulation. Do not carry that guilt. It is not yours to carry. Sarah hugged me suddenly, sobbing on my shoulder. I hugged her back, feeling her pain, her guilt, her regret. When she finally calmed down, we sat together on the sofa in my office. What do you do for a living? I asked gently. I work as a nurse in a public hospital in Queens, she replied, wiping her eyes. It barely pays the bills, but it is honest. Not like what Brad did. Did you know about his frauds at work? I suspected, Sarah admitted. Brad always took moral shortcuts. Since he was young, he believed rules did not apply to him. Our parents tried to correct that, but... She stopped, seeming lost in memories. Sarah, I said after a moment, you came here to apologize, and I accept your apology even though it is not necessary. But now I want to offer you something. She looked at me surprised. The foundation I established to help women victims of abuse is expanding, I explained. We need healthcare professionals to offer medical care to our beneficiaries. Many of them have physical trauma, in addition to emotional. Would you be interested in working with us? Sarah's eyes went wide. Are you offering me a job? After what my brother did? You are not your brother, I said firmly. And from what I can see, you are exactly the kind of compassionate and dedicated person we need. Of course, if you are interested. Yes, Sarah exclaimed. Yes, I am absolutely interested. I do not know what to say. Thank you so much. I smiled. Do not thank me yet. It is hard work and emotionally demanding, but it is also incredibly rewarding. Sarah started working at the foundation the following week, and she was right. It was hard work, but seeing her interact with the women we helped, with such gentleness and understanding, confirmed that I had made the right decision. One afternoon, about a month after Sarah started, she walked into my office with a strange expression. What is it? I asked. I received a letter, she said, from Brad, from prison. My stomach turned. You are not obligated to read it if you do not want to, I said quickly. I already read it, Sarah replied, and it has a part about you. He asked me to ask if you would visit him. I leaned back in the chair, processing that. He wants me to visit him in prison? He said he needs to talk to you, Sarah explained, that there are things he needs to say personally. But I understand completely if you do not want to go. You do not owe him anything. I remained silent for a long moment, considering. I will think about it, I said finally. Over the next few days, the idea of visiting Brad haunted me. Part of me wanted to never see him again. But another part, the part seeking complete closure, felt that maybe I needed to hear what he had to say. I discussed it with Arthur. I do not think it is a good idea, he said frankly. He does not deserve more of your time or energy. I know, I nodded. But maybe I need it, not for him, but for me. To completely close this chapter, Arthur sighed. If you decide to go, I am going with you. I do not trust him, even behind bars. A week later, I found myself entering a maximum security prison for the first time in my life. The security process was rigorous. Search, metal detector, multiple logs. Every steel door that slammed shut behind me made my heart beat faster. Arthur was by my side, a comforting presence. I was taken to a visitation room. It was Spartan, just a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs on either side, and a guard positioned in the corner. I sat and waited. When Brad entered, I barely recognized him. He had lost a drastic amount of weight, eyes sunken, hair cropped close. The orange prison uniform seemed to swallow his shrunken frame. He looked like he had aged 20 years in months. He sat on the other side of the table, handcuffed, and looked at me with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. You came, he whispered, voice hoarse. I didn't think you would come. I almost didn't, I replied honestly. Why did you ask me to come here, Brad? He lowered his gaze to his handcuffed hands on the table. Because I need you to know the truth, the whole truth. I already know the truth, I said coldly. I saw it on the videos, I heard it at the trial. Not all of it, he insisted. There are things I never said, things that I need to get off my chest before they consume me. I crossed my arms. I am listening. Brad took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. When I met you, he began. After that accident, I already knew who you were. I knew you were Victoria Vance, heiress to a fortune. And that was exactly why I approached you. The words fell like bombs, but I kept my expression neutral. Go on. I worked at your company, he explained. I knew the story of how the owner's daughter had disappeared years earlier. When I saw you in the hospital, confused, without memories, I recognized you from old photos. And I saw an opportunity. My jaw clenched, but I forced myself to keep listening. My original plan was to marry you, wait for you to recover your memory or be found by the family, and then divorce you, taking half the fortune, Brad continued, voice growing weaker. But as the years went by, and no one found you, I realized you would never recover your memory completely. And then the plan changed. To kill me, I finished, voice flat. Yes, he admitted, tears streaming down his face. But I want you to know, in the beginning, before everything got so twisted, there were moments when I really cared about you. You were so sweet, so dedicated. You had a purity I had never known before. But it wasn't enough to overcome your greed, I said. No, he nodded miserably. And that turns me into the monster I am. Victoria, you didn't deserve any of what I did. Nothing. You gave me unconditional love, and I repaid it with betrayal and attempted murder. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Seeking forgiveness? Redemption? No, he replied, shaking his head. I know I deserve neither. I am telling you because you deserve to know that none of this was your fault. You always questioned yourself. I know. You questioned if you weren't enough of a wife, if you could have done something different. And I need you to know there was nothing you could do. I was rotten from the start. I stayed silent, processing his words. And Jessica? I asked finally. Did she know from the beginning too? No, Brad said. Jessica genuinely was your friend, initially. But I seduced her. I manipulated her. I exploited her financial insecurity, her own ambitions. When I suggested the plan to poison you, she resisted at first. But I convinced her. I said you would never know, that it would be quick, painless. I lied to her too. That does not absolve her, I said firmly. No, Brad nodded. It does not absolve. She made terrible choices, just like me, and we are both paying for that. He looked around the grim visitation room. 20 years here, he murmured. 20 years to think about how I threw away the only good thing I ever had in life. You were my diamond, exactly like that man said, and I traded you for worthless stones. Yes, you traded, I agreed without pity. And now you have to live with that. I know, he said, and I will. But before you go, I need to say one last thing. I waited. Thank you, he said, voice cracking, for being the incredible person you are, for using your pain to help others through the foundation. Sarah told me about your work there, about how you treated her with kindness, even being my sister. You took the most horrible thing that ever happened to you and transformed it into something beautiful. That is more than I could ever do. I stood up, signaling that the visit was over. Goodbye, Brad, I said. I hope you find some form of peace here, not for you, but because carrying hate and remorse for the rest of life benefits no one. Did you forgive me? He asked suddenly, desperate. Even just a little? I stopped at the door, considering. I forgave enough to move on with my life, I replied. But I will never forget, and I will never pretend that what you did was anything less than the horror it truly was. I left without looking back. On the way back, Arthur asked how I was. Surprisingly well, I replied. Hearing him admit everything, take complete responsibility, somehow freed me from any remaining doubt or guilt. It wasn't anything I did. It was all him. You are a remarkable woman, Victoria, Arthur said. Stronger than anyone I have ever met. I smiled, looking out the window at the city out there. I wasn't strong before, I said, but I became so, and I am not going to waste that strength. 1 year after the trial, the foundation was flourishing beyond my most optimistic expectations. We had expanded to 6 cities, helping more than 500 women a month, and our success rate, women who managed to rebuild their lives and become self-sufficient, was impressive. I was in the office one Friday afternoon, reviewing the quarterly numbers, when Sarah knocked on my door. Come in, I called, smiling when I saw her. She had become not only a valuable employee but a true friend. There is someone here who would like to meet you, Sarah said, looking excited. One of the women from our program 6 months ago. She stepped aside, revealing a woman in her 30s whom I vaguely recognized. Her name was Megan, I remembered. She had come to the foundation beaten, broken, without a dime, fleeing a violent husband. But the woman in front of me now was transformed. She was dressed professionally, posture confident, eyes shining with life. Mrs. Vance, Megan said, voice firm. I came to thank you personally. You saved my life. Literally. Please, call me Victoria, I said, indicating the chairs. And you saved your own life by having the courage to ask for help. Megan sat down smiling. Maybe, she agreed, but the foundation gave me the tools. The professional training I received here got me a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm. My boss was so impressed with my work that he is paying for me to go to college at night. I am going to get a law degree. Tears filled my eyes. It was for stories like this that I did all this. That is wonderful, Megan. I am so proud of you. And there is more, Megan continued. I won full custody of my children. My ex-husband was imprisoned for domestic violence and assault, thanks to the foundation lawyers who helped me build the case. You deserve all that and more, I said sincerely. I came not only to thank, Megan said, but also to ask. Does the foundation accept volunteers? Especially volunteers who went through the program? I want to give back. I want to help other women the way I was helped. We always need volunteers, I replied, feeling my heart warm. Especially those who understand from their own experience what our beneficiaries are going through. Megan and I talked for another hour, planning how she could get involved. When she left, I felt renewed, remembering why I started all this. That night, alone in my apartment, a luxurious penthouse but one I had decorated to be cozy, not ostentatious, I reflected on my journey. A year ago, I was waking up from a coma, devastated, betrayed, believing I had nothing. And now, I had everything. Not materially, although I certainly had financial resources, but emotionally, spiritually. I had purpose, I had true friends, I had self-respect. My phone rang. It was a message from Sarah. Jessica went into labor. Thought you would like to know. I looked at the message for a long time. Jessica was about to be a mother, even while in prison. Her daughter would be taken from her at birth, placed in temporary state custody until she proved herself capable of being a fit mother. It was sad, but they were the consequences of her choices, I replied to Sarah. Thank you for letting me know. I hope the delivery goes well and the baby is healthy. Because in the end, the child was innocent. She was not to blame for the sins of her parents. A few days later, I received another message from Sarah. Jessica had given birth to a healthy girl. The child was being cared for in a foster institution until Jessica's situation was reevaluated. Something inside me moved, an innocent child, paying for what her mother did, just like so many children in the situations the foundation dealt with daily. I called my lawyers. I want to explore the possibility of becoming the temporary guardian of Jessica Sanders' daughter, I said. There was silence on the other end of the line. Mrs. Vance, my lawyer said carefully. Are you sure? That is the daughter of the woman who tried to kill you. The daughter is innocent, I replied firmly. And as long as Jessica is in prison, this child deserves a chance. She deserves love and care, not to be thrown into the system. And if Jessica objects, then I will respect her decision, I said. But at least I am going to offer. The process took weeks. Background checks, psychological evaluations, home visits, all to ensure I would be a suitable guardian. During that time, I visited Jessica in prison. It was strange being on the other side of the visitation table, where Brad had sat months before. Jessica looked exhausted, eyes red from crying so much. Pregnancy and childbirth in prison had taken their toll. Why are you here? She asked, voice suspicious. To make a proposal, I replied calmly. Your daughter needs someone to take care of her while you serve your sentence. I am offering to be her temporary guardian. Jessica stared at me as if I had grown a second head. Are you kidding me? After what I did? I am not doing this for you, I clarified. I am doing it for the child. Every child deserves a chance, regardless of who their parents are. And I thought you might prefer someone you know to take care of her, instead of strangers in the system. Jessica started to cry. I do not understand, she sobbed. Why would you do that? How can you be so good after everything? I am not good, I corrected. I am just someone who believes the cycle of pain has to stop somewhere. Your daughter is not to blame. She deserves better. If you do this, Jessica said between sobs, I promise I will do everything to be a better mother when I get out of here. I will do therapy. I will change. I will. Jessica, I interrupted gently, do not promise anything now. Just focus on serving your sentence, on working on yourself. We will see the rest at the right time. 2 months later, after endless approvals and paperwork, a social worker appeared at my door holding a tiny baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Mrs. Vance, she said. This is Lily, Jessica Sanders' daughter. I took the baby in my arms, looking at that perfect and innocent face. Lily looked back at me with big, curious eyes, and my heart melted. Welcome home, Lily, I whispered. The following months were the most challenging and rewarding of my life. Taking care of a baby while managing a company and a foundation was not easy, but I hired a wonderful nanny to help, and Sarah was a dedicated adoptive aunt. Seeing Lily grow, learn, smile was magical. She was a constant reminder that good can come even from the most horrible situations. I visited Jessica once a month in prison, bringing photos and videos of Lily. Jessica always cried. She always thanked me. She always swore she would be better. Only time would tell if she would keep those promises. 2 years passed. The foundation continued to grow. We had helped thousands of women now, each with their story of survival and triumph. Lily was 2 years old, a happy and chatty little girl who lit up every day. Jessica had progressed well in prison, participating in all available rehabilitation programs, working hard to prove she deserved a second chance. And I had finally found true peace. It was not the peace of a life without problems. There were still daily challenges, both personal and professional. But it was the peace of knowing who I was, what I was worth, what I could offer the world. One afternoon I was sitting in the park with Lily, watching her play on the slide, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? "Mrs. Vance," said a formal male voice. "This is from the state penitentiary." Brad Thompson asked to call. He is very sick. He does not have much time left. He is asking to see you one last time." My heart tightened. How much time? Doctors say maybe days. A week at most. I looked at Lily laughing happily on the slide, so full of life and joy. Then I thought about Brad, dying alone in a prison cell. "I am going to visit him tomorrow," I said. The next day, I entered that familiar prison again. But this time, I was taken to the infirmary, not the visitation room. Brad was lying on a narrow bed, connected to machines that beeped softly. He had lost even more weight, skin gray, eyes sunken. He looked 80 years old, not the 40-something he really was. I sat in the chair next to the bed. His eyes opened slowly. "You came," he whispered, voice weak. "I came," I confirmed. "Cancer," he explained. "Terminal stage. Ironically, my body is killing me the way I tried to kill you. Slowly, painfully. I am very sorry you are suffering," I said. And it was true. Even after everything, I did not wish anyone to suffer that way. "Do not be," he replied. "It is karma. Justice. I deserved it." We stayed in silence for a moment. "Lily is beautiful," he said suddenly. "Sarah showed me photos. You are taking care of the daughter of the woman who tried to kill you. Why? Because someone needs to break the cycle," I replied simply. "And Lily is innocent." Brad smiled weakly. "You were always better than any of us deserved," he murmured. "And I am going to die knowing I threw away the best thing I ever had." "Brad," I said softly, "have you forgiven yourself yet?" He looked at me surprised. "Forgive myself?" "Yes," I confirmed. "You regretted it. You took responsibility. You are paying for what you did. But did you forgive yourself?" Tears streamed from the corners of his eyes. "How can I, after everything I did? Because carrying that hate for yourself in the last moments of your life only hurts you more," I said. "You cannot change the past, but you can choose how you face the end." "Did you forgive me?" he asked, voice cracking. "Even just a little?" I thought carefully before answering. "Yes," I said finally. "I forgave. It does not mean I forgot, or that what you did was acceptable, but it means I do not carry anger or hate anymore. You are a broken man who made terrible choices, and you are paying the ultimate price for those choices. Carrying anger beyond that serves no purpose." Brad cried then, sobs shaking his frail body. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for being the person you are, for giving me more than I ever deserved." I held his trembling hand until he fell asleep, exhausted. Brad Thompson died 3 days later. Sarah called me with the news, her own voice full of conflicted tears. Mourning for a brother she loved despite everything, mixed with anger for what he had become. I attended the funeral. It was small, just Sarah, me, and a few distant acquaintances. The body was cremated, the ashes scattered according to his last request. And so ended the final chapter of Brad's story and mine, not with anger or revenge, but with peaceful closure. 5 years passed since that terrible day. I woke up from the coma. 5 years of transformation, growth, healing, and purpose. I was on the stage of a large auditorium in Los Angeles, about to give a lecture on female empowerment. The venue was full, hundreds of women, all eager to hear my story. I looked at the front row where Sarah held Lily, now 7 years old, on her lap. Jessica was sitting next to them, recently released on parole after 5 years of good behavior. She had kept her promise, worked hard on her rehabilitation, completed vocational training, and was slowly rebuilding her relationship with her daughter under my careful supervision. It wasn't easy. Jessica still had difficult days, moments when the weight of her choices crushed her, but she was genuinely trying to be better. I took a deep breath and began my speech. 5 years ago, I began. I woke up from a coma to discover I had been abandoned by the man I swore to love until death. I found a note telling me to pay my own hospital bills, that I was just a burden. In that moment, I felt like my life was over, that I had nothing. I paused, letting the words settle, but I was wrong. Actually, that was the beginning of my true life. Because only when I lost everything I thought was important, my marriage, my supposed best friend, my identity as a wife, did I discover who I really was. I told my story. Not all the sordid details, but enough. The poisoning, the betrayal, the discovery of my true identity, the revenge I sought, and the justice I found. But the most important part of the story, I continued, is not about revenge or justice. It is about what I chose to do after. It is about taking the deepest pain and transforming it into purpose. I talked about the foundation, about the thousands of women we helped, about women like Megan, who came in broken and came out strong, about women who discovered they had worth, power, capacity, far beyond what any abuser told them. And I spoke about forgiveness, I said, my voice becoming softer. Not the kind of forgiveness that forgets or minimizes, but the forgiveness that liberates, that allows you to move on without carrying the weight of hate. I pointed to Jessica in the audience. That woman participated in the plan to kill me, I said clearly. She spent 5 years in prison for her crimes and is now sitting here because I chose not to let what she did define her entire existence. She is working hard to be a better mother to her daughter, to be a better person. Does she deserve that chance? I do not know, but I know her daughter deserves to have a mother who tries. Jessica was crying, as were several women in the audience. The message I want to leave today, I concluded, is this. You are not defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You are not defined by who betrayed you, who hurt you, who told you that you are worthless. You are defined by how you choose to get up, by how you choose to use your pain, by how you choose to move forward. I could have let that experience destroy me. I could have stayed trapped in anger and resentment, but I chose differently. I chose to get up. I chose to fight. I chose to transform my tragedy into a mission. And every one of you has that same power. No matter what happened to you, no matter who told you that you are not enough. You are a diamond, even if people too blind to see your value treated you like a stone. The audience exploded in applause. Women stood up, some crying, some smiling, all clearly moved. After the lecture, dozens of women sought me out, some wanting to share their own stories, others seeking advice, all thanking me for having the courage to tell my truth. That night, at home, I sat on the sofa with Lily curled up next to me, reading a storybook. Sarah was making tea in the kitchen. Jessica had gone to her own small but dignified apartment, where she was rebuilding her life. "Aunt Victoria?" said Lily, looking up with her big, curious eyes. "Yes? My love, are you happy?" The question surprised me in its simplicity. "Yes, Lily," I replied sincerely. "I am very happy." "Good," she said, smiling. "Because you deserve to be happy. You are the best person I know." I hugged her tight, feeling tears of gratitude in my eyes. Later, after putting Lily to bed, I went out onto the balcony of my apartment. The city shone below, millions of lives being lived, each with their own struggles and triumphs. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Arthur. "Your father would be incredibly proud of the woman you have become. And so am I." I smiled, feeling a deep peace settle over me. I thought about everything that had happened, the pain, the betrayal, the coma, the discovery, the revenge, the justice, the forgiveness, the healing, and I realized that every piece had been necessary. Every moment of pain had shaped me into the person I was now, stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Brad was right about one thing. I was a diamond, but not because I was born into a rich family or because I inherited a fortune. I was a diamond because I survived the pressure, the heat, the darkness, and emerged stronger and brighter than before. And unlike Brad, who threw his diamond away for worthless stones, I had learned my own value. No one could take that from me again. I looked up at the starry sky, thinking of my father, of the parents I lost young, of all the people who had shaped me along the way. "Thank you," I whispered to the universe, "for breaking me just to show me how to rebuild myself stronger." I went back inside, where Sarah had left a cup of hot tea waiting for me. I picked it up, savoring the warmth, the comfort. My journey had been painful, but in the end, it was worth it, because I discovered that true strength does not come from never falling. It comes from choosing to get up every time you fall. It comes from transforming your scars into wisdom, your pain into purpose. And that was a lesson I would carry for the rest of my life. Now, if you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you with your mouth open. Oh, and do not forget to become a member to have access to exclusive videos that I do not upload here. I will see you there.